We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now let's dive into today's story. The manila folder landed on Ian Lloyd's desk with a soft thud, disrupting the tower of coffee cups he'd accumulated during his 18-hour shift. Federal Agent Zach Dwyer stood before him, arms crossed, his usually jovial face set in lines. "You're not going to like this," Zach said, his voice low enough that the other agents in the bustling office couldn't hear. "But you need to see it." Ian's fingers hesitated over the folder. After 15 years in the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, he developed an instinct for when cases were about to take unexpected turns. The weight in his partner's voice told him this was one of those moments. "The Kirk surveillance photos finally came in?" Ian asked, though he already knew the answer. They'd been tracking Pete Kirk's construction company for months, suspecting it was laundering money for a larger criminal enterprise. Zach pulled up a chair, the wheels squeaking against the linoleum floor. "Yeah, but that's not why I'm here." He tapped the folder. "Open it." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Ian flipped open the cover. The first photo was grainy but clear enough. The Westview Hotel's elegant facade, its revolving doors gleaming in the afternoon sun. The timestamp read 2:15 p.m., Tuesday. His eyes moved to the figures entering the hotel, and his heart stopped. Molly, his wife of 12 years. She wore the red dress he'd bought her for their anniversary, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist. A man in an expensive suit held the door for her, his hand resting too familiarly on the small of her back. "Pete Kirk." "There's more," Zach said quietly. 3 times a week for the past month. Always the same pattern. They meet at 2, leave separately around 4. Ian's hands didn't shake as he flipped through the photos. Each one felt like a physical blow, but his FBI training kicked in, forcing him to analyze them with professional detachment. Different days, different outfits, but always the same hotel, the same man, the same intimate gestures. "The timeline matches up," he said, his voice steady despite the roaring in his ears. "All those fitness classes she suddenly started taking." Zach leaned forward, lowering his voice further. "Look, I know this is personal now, but we've got to handle this by the book. Kirk's organization is bigger than we thought. The construction company's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got evidence suggesting connections to 3 unsolved homicides." Ian's mind raced back over the past few months. The late-night phone calls Molly thought he hadn't noticed. The new passwords on her phone and laptop. The sudden interest in their financial arrangements. He'd attributed it all to the rough patch they'd been going through, the distance that had grown between them as his case workload increased. "She's been asking about transferring our joint accounts," he said, pieces clicking into place. "Said she wanted to take a more active role in our finances." "Classic pattern," Zach confirmed. "Kirk's been using romantic relationships to facilitate his money laundering. Gets close to women with access to legitimate accounts, convinces them to move money around. We've identified 3 other women in the past 2 years. What happened to them?" Zach's silence was answer enough. The office bustled around them, agents making calls, keyboards clicking, printers humming, the normal soundtrack of their work. But to Ian, it all seemed distant, muffled, as if he were underwater. "I should have seen it," he said, studying a photo where Molly laughed at something Kirk had said, her face lit up in a way he hadn't seen in months. "The signs were all there." "You couldn't have known," Zach replied. "Kirk's good at what he does. Real estate, construction, legitimate businesses on the surface. He picks his targets carefully. Successful women in stable marriages, usually with connections to financial institutions or law enforcement." Ian's jaw tightened. "He's using her to get to me. To our investigation. Maybe. Or maybe he doesn't know you're FBI. Either way, we need to handle this carefully. If he realizes we're onto him, he'll eliminate the liability," Ian finished. He'd seen it before. Criminals cutting ties with associates who could connect them to their crimes. Usually permanently. A young agent approached their desks, then quickly retreated at Zach's warning look. The photos scattered across Ian's desk told a story he couldn't quite process yet. His wife, their marriage, his case, all colliding in a potentially lethal combination. "I've got agents running background on every woman connected to Kirk's operations," Zach continued. His ex-wife, Rebecca Archer, filed multiple domestic violence reports before disappearing 3 years ago. Never found her body. Ian gathered the photos, sliding them back into the folder with methodical precision. We need to move carefully. If Kirk realizes we're investigating him, he might spook and run. Or worse. No, Ian said, his voice hardening. If he realizes I'm investigating him, Molly becomes a liability. A witness who can connect him directly to his operations. Zach nodded. What's your play? Ian stood, straining his tie. Years of training kicked in, pushing personal feelings aside, focusing on procedure, on evidence, on the next logical step. We maintain surveillance. Document everything. I need to know exactly what kind of operation Kirk's running and how deep Molly's involved. And personally, I act normal. Give them enough rope to hang themselves. Ian picked up his coffee cup, grimacing at the cold liquid. Kirk's careful, professional. He wouldn't risk meeting her at the Westview without a larger plan in motion. You think he's setting something up? 3 times a week at a high-end hotel? That's not just an affair. He's grooming her for something bigger. Ian pulled his jacket from the back of his chair. Get me everything you can on Kirk's previous relationships. Financial records, travel patterns, communications, everything. What about Molly? We should put a tail on her. No. Ian shook his head. She knows law enforcement procedures. She'd spot a tail. Besides, she's not our target. Kirk is. We follow him. We find out what he's planning. Zach stood, concern etched on his features. Ian, maybe you should step back from this one. Let another agent take lead. Would you? If it was your wife. The silence between them held volumes. That's what I thought. Ian straightened his shoulders, compartmentalizing his emotions like he'd been trained to do. Kirk's using my wife to either get to me or to my accounts. Either way, he picked the wrong federal agent to mess with. Just be careful, Zach said. Don't let it get personal. Ian's laugh held no humor. It became personal the moment he walked into that hotel with my wife. He picked up the folder, tucking it securely under his arm. But that doesn't mean I won't handle it professionally. As he walked toward the elevator, his phone buzzed. A text from Molly. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. He typed back a casual response, the same kind he'd sent 100 times before. Okay, honey, stay safe. The elevator doors closed, and Ian allowed himself one moment, just one, to feel the full weight of betrayal and rage. Then he pushed it aside. He had work to do, and lives depended on him doing it right. The numbers above the elevator ticked down, and with each floor, Agent Ian Lloyd buried the husband deeper beneath the federal investigator. By the time he reached the parking garage, his mind was clear, focused on the case. Pete Kirk had just made the biggest mistake of his criminal career. He'd made it personal. Detective Bessie Roach's office in the homicide division looked like organized chaos, but Ian knew better. Every stack of files, every pinned note, every coffee-stained report had its place in the veteran detective's mental map. She'd been working homicide longer than he'd been in law enforcement, and her reputation for connecting seemingly unrelated cases was legendary. 3 bodies, Bessie said, spreading crime scene photos across her cluttered desk. All found at different construction sites owned by Kirk's companies. All ruled accidents by the medical examiner. Ian studied the photos, his trained eye noting details. Construction sites are dangerous. Accidents happen. Sure they do. Bessie's voice dripped sarcasm. Just like it's totally normal for all 3 victims to be women with recent large bank transfers to offshore accounts. The office was small, cramped with decades of case files and the lingering smell of stale coffee. Through the window, photos of 3 women who'd trusted the wrong man. Tell me about the cases, Ian said, pulling up a chair that creaked under his weight. Bessie pulled out a thick file. First victim, Sandra Chun, found at the bottom of an elevator shaft at Kirk's downtown project. Second, Maria Delgado, apparently fell from scaffolding at his waterfront development. Third, Lisa Montgomery, carbon monoxide poisoning in an underground parking structure under construction. All ruled accidents? Medical examiner couldn't prove otherwise. Bessie's weathered face showed her frustration. But here's where it gets interesting. All 3 women had recently gone through divorces. All had access to significant financial assets. and all had been seen frequently with Kirk in the months before their deaths. Ian's stomach churned as he thought of Molly. He seduces them, uses them to move money, then eliminates the connection. That's my theory. Bessie pulled out more files. I've got similar cases from other jurisdictions. Women with access to money or connections, romantic relationships with Kirk, suspicious deaths ruled as accidents. Why hasn't anyone connected the dots before? Different jurisdictions, different investigators. Plus, Kirk's smart. He spaces them out, uses different methods, makes them look like genuine accidents. It took me 3 years to put this pattern together. Ian picked up a photo of Sandra Chen. She was smiling at the camera, unaware she had less than 6 months to live. What's his pattern? How long does he usually wait? Bessie's chair creaked as she leaned back. Based on the cases I've tracked, 3 to 6 months from first contact to accident. He needs time to gain their trust, to set up the financial arrangements. But not so long that they might start asking questions. Or talking to the wrong people, Ian added. Exactly. Bessie studied him for a moment. This isn't just professional curiosity, is it? You've got something specific you're working on? Ian hesitated, then decided to trust the detective's discretion. My wife's been meeting him 3 times a week at the Westview Hotel. Bessie's expression didn't change, but her eyes softened slightly. How long? At least a month that we know of. Shit. Bessie stood, pacing the small space between her desk and the file cabinets. You need to get her out. Now. It's not that simple. She's already involved in his operations somehow. If I spook them now, she's in danger whether she knows it or not, Bessie interrupted. Kirk's been using women to launder money through real estate purchases. Once they've served their purpose, they disappear. Clean, simple, profitable. Ian leaned forward. Tell me everything you know about his operation. For the next hour, Bessie laid out her investigation in meticulous detail. Kirk's pattern was consistent. He targeted women with access to legitimate financial channels, preferably those with connections to law enforcement or financial institutions. He charmed them, gained their trust, convinced them to help move money through their accounts or businesses. The real estate angle is clever, Bessie explained. Construction companies are cash-intensive businesses. Easy to inflate costs, high transactions. The women help legitimize the money movements, usually without realizing they're part of a laundering operation. And when they outlive their usefulness, tragic accidents happen. Bessie's voice was grim. Always at his construction sites. Always with plausible explanations. The victim's connection to Kirk is explained away as a business relationship or brief romance. By the time anyone starts asking questions, he's moved on to his next target. Ian pulled out his own notes. His ex-wife, Rebecca Archer. Multiple domestic violence reports. Then she disappeared. Yeah, I looked into that one. No body found, but Bessie rifled through her files, pulling out a report. 3 weeks before she disappeared, she'd started asking questions about Kirk's business practices. Tried to hire a private investigator. What happened to the PI? Car accident. Brake failure on a mountain road. Bessie's expression was telling. Very unfortunate timing. Ian absorbed the information, his mind racing. Kirk's got someone in law enforcement. Has to keep these deaths classified as accidents. My money's on someone in the ME's office, Bessie agreed. Maybe higher up? The pattern's too consistent, too clean, which means we need to be careful who we trust with this information. Bessie nodded. I've kept this investigation quiet. Official records show cold cases, accidents, nothing connecting them to Kirk. But I've been building the pattern, waiting for someone else to see it. Why tell me all this now? Because your wife's next. Bessie's bluntness was characteristic of her years in homicide. And you're probably the only person who can stop it without tipping Kirk off that we're on to his larger operation. Ian stood, processing everything he'd learned. I need copies of everything you have. Cases, photos, financial records. Anything that shows Kirk's pattern. Already prepared. Bessie pulled a thick envelope from her desk drawer. Been waiting for someone else to see what I was seeing. Just didn't expect it to get this personal. As Ian reached for the envelope, Bessie held on to it for a moment longer. Listen, I've seen what happens when cops try to handle cases involving their families. Don't let emotion cloud your judgment. Kirk survived this long because he's careful, patient, and absolutely ruthless. I know how to handle myself. I'm sure you do. But this isn't just about you anymore. Bessie finally released the envelope. Your wife's got about 3 months before Kurt's pattern says she becomes expendable. Whatever you're planning, do it before then. Ian tucked the envelope into his briefcase. Thank you, Detective. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Bessie turned back to her desk. Just make sure your wife doesn't end up in one of these files. As Ian left the homicide division, his phone buzzed again. Another text from Molly. Having dinner with the girls. Don't forget to feed the kids. He typed back, already ordered pizza. Have fun. The lie came easily now, just as hers did. The kids were already safely away at his sister's house, something he'd arranged days ago when his instincts first told him something was wrong. In the parking lot, he sat in his car for a long moment, studying Bessie's files. 3 months. He had 3 months to save his wife from herself, to bring down Kirk's operation, and to make sure nobody else ended up in Detective Roach's collection of suspicious accidents. Across the police department parking lot, somewhere across town, his wife was meeting with a man who had murdered at least 3 women, and she thought she was in love. The coffee shop was nearly empty at this late hour, which was exactly why Dina Carroll had chosen it. She sat in the furthest corner, hands wrapped around an untouched latte, jumping slightly when the bell above the door announced Ian's arrival. He spotted her immediately, Molly's best friend for the past decade, the woman who'd been maid of honor at their wedding, godmother to their children. Now she looked small, frightened, nothing like the confident real estate agent he knew. Thank you for meeting me, Dina said as he slid into the booth opposite her. I didn't know who else to talk to. Ian studied her face, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly. Tell me everything. She's going to leave you. The words tumbled out in a rush. For Pete. He's convinced her to transfer your joint accounts into her name. She thinks he's going to marry her. But Dina's voice cracked. But what? I overheard him talking on the phone yesterday at the real estate office. He was discussing using her as a fall person for some illegal deals. Dina's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. The way he talked about her, Ian, like she was just another business transaction. The coffee shop's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A barista wiped down tables in the distance, the rhythmic motion a counterpoint to Dina's nervous energy. Tell me exactly what you heard, Ian said, keeping his voice steady, professional. He was in Martha Wu's office. You know Martha from the real estate agency? Dina leaned forward, lowering her voice. I was dropping off some paperwork, and I heard him say something about setting up the accounts and making sure she takes the fall when it all goes south. He laughed about it, Ian. Actually laughed. Ian's mind raced, fitting this new information into the pattern he'd been building. Has Molly said anything specific about their plans? She thinks they're in love. Dina's voice dripped with disgust. Says he understands her in a way you never did. That he's going to take her away from her boring life and show her the world. She reached into her purse, hands shaking slightly as she pulled out a small notebook. I've been writing down dates, times, anything that seemed suspicious. I thought I was being paranoid at first, but you did the right thing, Ian assured her, accepting the notebook. When did you first notice something was wrong? About 2 months ago. Molly started asking strange questions about international real estate transactions, offshore accounts. Said it was for a client, but she was too specific with her questions. Dina took a shaky sip of her coffee. Then last week, I saw her at the bank with Pete. They were talking to Winston Chun in international transfers. When I tried to say hello, she practically ran away. Ian flipped through the notebook, noting Dina's meticulous observations. Dates, locations, snippets of overheard conversations. She documented everything with the attention to detail of someone who knew they were witnessing something dangerous. There's more, Dina continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Yesterday, I overheard her on the phone with Johanna McFarland, the divorce attorney. Yes, she's been planning this for weeks, Ian. Pete's convinced her that she needs to secure her assets before. Dina's voice trailed off as her phone buzzed. The color drained from her face as she read the message. It's Molly. She's asking where I am. So she needs to talk to me about something important. Ian's training kicked in. Don't tell her about this meeting. Act normal. If she confides in you about any plans, just listen. Don't try to talk her out of anything. But she's my best friend. I can't just... If Pete realizes you know anything, you could be in danger. Ian's voice was firm but gentle. The best way to help Molly right now is to let her think everything's normal. Dina's hands trembled as she typed a response to Molly. I told her I'm at home with a migraine. She looked up at Ian, eyes glistening. She's going to text you soon. Pete wants to meet with you, to tell you everything. She thinks it's about the affair, but the way he talked about it. Ian's phone buzzed right on cue. He read Molly's message aloud. Pete is coming over to tell you everything about our affair. Face it like a man. The coffee shop seemed to grow colder as the implications sank in. Pete Kirk, a man connected to multiple suspicious deaths, wanted to meet him alone. When is this meeting supposed to happen? Dina asked, her voice tight with fear. Tomorrow evening. Ian's mind was already racing through scenarios, procedures, protocols. Dina, I need you to do something for me. It's important that you follow my instructions exactly. She nodded, hanging on his every word. Tomorrow, take a long lunch. Go to that new spa in the mall, the one with the strict no-phone policy. Make sure people see you there, that you have receipts, witnesses. You want me to have an alibi, she realized. Oh God, Ian, what's going to happen? Nothing, if I can help it. He pulled out his business card, scribbling a number on the back. This is my partner's direct line. If anything feels wrong, if Molly or Pete start asking strange questions about me or about this conversation, you call him immediately. Dina tucked the card in her wallet with shaking hands. I should have said something sooner. When I first noticed things changing. You're saying something now. That's what matters. Ian stood, leaving his untouched coffee on the table. One more thing. Forward any messages from Molly or Pete to this email address. Don't delete anything, no matter how trivial it seems. As they walked to the parking lot, the night air cool and damp, Dina grabbed Ian's arm. Promise me you'll help her. Whatever she's done, whatever she's involved in, promise me you'll get her out safely. Ian looked at his wife's best friend, seeing the genuine fear and concern in her eyes. I promise I'll do everything I can to keep her safe, even from herself. After Dina drove away, Ian sat in his car for a long moment, reviewing her notebook. Tomorrow, Pete Kirk would try to eliminate a federal agent he saw as a threat, using the revelation of an affair as cover. But Kirk had made a crucial mistake. He'd underestimated how much evidence Ian had already gathered, how many pieces were already in place. His phone buzzed again with another message from Molly. I hope you can be mature about this. Pete just wants to talk. Ian typed back a response that would fit his wife's image of him as an oblivious husband, of course. I'll be home tomorrow evening. The trap was set, but Ian wasn't the target Kirk thought he was. As he drove home through the dark streets, he began making calls, setting his own plan in motion. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. The morning light filtered through the blinds of Wilson Love's corner office. Ian sat across from his attorney, watching as the older man methodically arranged documents into precise stacks. Everything's prepared, Wilson said, his voice carrying the measured tone of someone who'd handled countless high-stakes divorces. Custody papers, emergency protective orders, financial freezes. We can file it all the moment you give the word. Ian picked up one of the documents, scanning the legal language that would effectively end his marriage. And you're sure about the timing? In cases involving law enforcement officers, especially federal agents, timing is everything. Wilson leaned back in his leather chair, his silver hair catching the morning light. The moment anything happens, we'll file everything simultaneously. She won't know what hit her. Ian thought about his children, safely ensconced at his sister Lupe's house. He'd told them it was a special vacation, a chance to spend time with their favorite aunt. The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. How did you explain it to Lupe? Wilson asked, as if reading his thoughts. Told her there was a security threat connected to one of my cases. Ian's fingers drummed against the armrest. Not entirely a lie. She didn't ask too many questions. She's good that way. Wilson nodded, pulling another file from his desk drawer. I've dealt with cases involving law enforcement before, but this is different. The combination of potential criminal charges and domestic issues. He shook his head. We need to be prepared for every possibility. What's your primary concern? Retaliation, Wilson's face grew serious. If Kirk is as connected as you suspect, he might have lawyers ready to counterfile the moment we move. We need to be ready for emergency motions, attempts to freeze your assets, maybe even false accusations of misconduct. Ian's phone buzzed, a text from Molly. The kids keep asking about you. Maybe you should call them. His jaw tightened as he showed Wilson the message. She doesn't know they're not at their friends' houses like she thinks. Good. Keep it that way. Wilson pulled out a legal pad. Now, talk me through your security preparations for tonight. If this goes sideways, I need to know exactly what happened and when. Ian laid out his plan, watching as Wilson took detailed notes. The surveillance cameras he'd installed, the recording devices, the backup team's position nearby. Everything had to be documented perfectly. The camera feeds, Wilson said, looking up from his notes. They're being recorded off-site? Triple redundancy. Local storage, cloud backup, and direct feed to FBI servers. Ian allowed himself a smile. If Kirk tries anything, we'll have it from multiple angles. And your partner? Dwyer. He'll be coordinating the surveillance team. Close enough to respond if needed. Far enough not to spook Kirk. Wilson set down his pen, studying Ian with the shrewd gaze that had made him one of the city's top divorce attorneys. You're sure about this approach? We could file for emergency custody now, get ahead of whatever Kirk's planning. No. Ian stood, pacing the length of the office. If we move too soon, Kirk disappears, and with him any chance of bringing down his entire operation. We need him to make his move, even if that move involves him trying to kill you. Especially then. Ian stopped at the window looking down at the city below. A federal agent's murder would bring too much heat. Kirk knows that. He'll try something more subtle. Wilson gathered the papers into a leather portfolio. I've got judges on standby, ready to sign emergency orders. The moment anything happens, anything at all, you call me. I don't care what time it is. What about Molly's likely moves? Based on her background in real estate and her connections, she'll probably try to hire Johanna McFarland. Wilson's expression soured at the name. McFarland specializes in going after law enforcement officers in divorce cases. Makes a sport of it. You faced her before? More times than I'd like. She's aggressive, creative with the truth, and has no qualms about destroying reputations. Wilson handed Ian a business card with his personal cell number. If McFarland gets involved, things will get ugly fast. Ian tucked the card into his wallet. Uglier than my wife conspiring with the murderers? Different kind of ugly. McFarland will try to paint you as the villain. Excessive force, police brutality, abuse of power. She'll use your job against you. A knock at the door interrupted them. Wilson's secretary entered with a fresh stack of documents. The emergency custody papers you requested, and the financial freeze motions. Thank you, Linda. Wilson accepted the papers, adding them to his portfolio. Remember, timestamp everything. We might need to prove exactly when each document was prepared. After the secretary left, Ian checked his watch. 6 hours until Kirk was supposed to arrive at his house. 6 hours to finalize every detail. One more thing, Wilson said as Ian stood to leave. If you're recording everything, we need to be careful about attorney-client privilege. Don't discuss our strategy on any devices that might be compromised. Ian nodded, understanding the implication. Molly might have access to our home systems. Exactly. From now until this is over, assume every communication could be monitored. Wilson stood, extending his hand. Be careful, Ian. Men like Kirk. They don't play by any rules we'd recognize. As Ian rode the elevator down to the parking garage, he received another text from Molly. Pete's looking forward to clearing the air tonight. Please be civil. He didn't respond. Civil was the last thing tonight would be. The afternoon sun beat down on Ian as he sat in his unmarked car, watching Martha Wu's real estate office through darkened windows. He'd known Martha for years. She'd helped them buy their house, attended their children's birthday parties, been part of their social circle. Now, reviewing the financial records spread across his passenger seat, he saw her in a different light. His phone buzzed with a text from Zach. Wu's meeting with Kirk's accountant right now. Started 10 minutes ago. Ian raised his binoculars, focusing on the second-floor window. Martha sat at her desk, animated in conversation with a man Ian recognized from surveillance photos. James Chun, Kirk's financial wizard. The pieces were falling into place. His laptop chimed with an incoming secure message. The financial analysis he'd requested had finally arrived. As he scrolled through the data, his suspicions were confirmed. Martha's agency had handled an unusually high number of cash real estate transactions over the past year, all involving properties connected to Kirk's construction projects. The radio crackled. "Target's on the move," Zach's voice reported. Chin's leaving the building. Ian watched as Chun emerged, carrying a thick envelope. Rather than heading to his car, the accountant walked 2 blocks to Albert Moody's house. Ian's neighbor, the man who'd borrowed their lawnmower countless times, was now apparently part of Kirk's network. "You seeing this?" Zach asked over the radio. "Yeah." Ian's voice was tight. "Give me everything on Moody. Employment records, financial statements, phone logs, everything. Already on it. You're not going to like what we found." Ian's laptop updated with new files. Albert Moody, retired high school teacher, had been providing alibis for Molly's meetings with Kirk. Phone records showed regular contact between Moody, Martha Wu, and several other names connected to Kirk's operations. But it was the school connection that made Ian's blood run cold. Hilda Merrill, the principal at his children's private school, appeared in multiple financial transactions. Large donations from Kirk's various shell companies had been flowing into the school's accounts. The school was their meeting place, Ian realized, speaking into his radio. That's why no one questioned Molly being there at odd hours. She was just another parent visiting the principal. "Gets worse," Zach replied. "Merrill's brother works for the zoning board. Every one of Kirk's construction projects got fast-track permits." Ian watched as Martha Wu left her office, carrying her designer briefcase. She walked to her Mercedes, the same car she'd bought after helping them purchase their home. He wondered how much of her commission on that sale had been legitimate. His phone buzzed again. Another secure message, this time from the forensic accounting team. They traced the money flow. Kirk's construction companies would overbill for projects. The excess cash would be used to purchase properties through Martha's agency, and those properties would then be sold at inflated prices to shell companies. Classic money laundering hidden behind legitimate businesses. "Sir?" A new voice on the radio. Agent Sarah Chun, no relation to the accountant. "We've got movement at the school." Ian switched his attention to the video feed from the surveillance team at his children's school. Hilda Merrill was leaving the building, but instead of heading home, she drove to a small coffee shop. Through the window, Ian could see her meeting with someone he recognized. Johanna McFarland, the divorce attorney Wilson had warned him about. "They're preparing for everything," Ian muttered. "What's the play?" Zach asked through the radio. "Let them meet. Record everything." Ian started his car. "I need to make one more stop before tonight." He drove to his neighbor's house, parking openly in front. Albert Moody was watering his prized roses, pretending not to notice the federal agent walking up his driveway. "Beautiful afternoon," Ian said pleasantly. Moody's hand shook slightly as he adjusted the spray. "Indeed it is. Something I can help you with, Ian? Just wondering how long you've been helping my wife lie to me." The watering can clattered to the ground. Moody's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about." "No." Ian kept his voice casual. "So you haven't been telling her children's teachers that you saw her at PTA meetings when she was actually at the Westview Hotel? Haven't been signing visitor logs at the school to create alibis?" "She said it was just an affair," Moody whispered. "That's all I knew. I didn't know about the other things." "What other things, Albert?" But Moody was already retreating toward his house. "I can't," he said, I have to go." Ian watched his neighbor scramble inside, door slamming. Through the window, he saw Moody immediately reach for his phone. Back in his car, Ian radioed Zach. "Moody's making a call. Track it. Already on it. It's going to a burner phone registered to one of Kirk's shell companies." "Good. Let them know I'm asking questions. Let them think I'm just a suspicious husband." The pieces were falling into place. Martha Wu laundering money through real estate. Albert Moody providing alibis. Hilda Merrill offering her school as a meeting place and now apparently coordinating with divorce attorneys. His phone buzzed one last time, a text from Molly. Albert just called. "What did you say to him?" Ian smiled. The trap was almost ready. The house was quiet as Ian made his final preparations. He'd chosen the living room for the confrontation, good sight lines, multiple escape routes, and most importantly, perfect coverage from the hidden cameras. His earpiece crackled softly. "Surveillance teams in position," Zach reported. "We've got eyes on all approaches. Kirk's location? Left the Westview Hotel 10 minutes ago. He's taking a circuitous route, checking for tails." Ian moved through the house one last time, checking each camera feed on his phone. The living room, kitchen, and all entry points were covered. In his home office, a secure laptop recorded everything to off-site servers. Movement at the end of the street, another agent reported. Black SUV, matching Kirk's vehicle. Ian took his position in the living room, deliberately leaving his back to the door. It's what an unsuspecting husband would do, and Kirk would expect him to play that role. The SUV's engine died. Footsteps on the walkway. 2 sets. Kirk wasn't alone. Second subject identified as Santos Hughes, Kirk's brother. Zach's voice was tense. "He's carrying." The doorbell rang, and Ian called out, "It's open." The door creaked slightly. He'd loosened the hinge deliberately, making it impossible to enter silently. Kirk entered first, his expensive suit immaculate, his smile practiced and confident. Santos hung back, trying to look casual as he positioned himself near the door. "Ian." Kirk's voice was smooth, reasonable. "Thank you for agreeing to talk like civilized men." Ian remained seated, watching Kirk's reflection in the darkened television screen. "Seems like the least I could do, given the circumstances." Kirk moved further into the room, his body language relaxed, but his eyes constantly moving, assessing. "I know this is difficult, finding out about Molly and me, but she wanted to be honest with you." "Honest?" Ian allowed a bitter laugh. "Is that what this is about?" "She's an extraordinary woman, Ian. She deserves more than being a federal agent's wife, always second to the job." Ian noticed Kirk's subtle movement, positioning himself to the side, out of the direct line between Ian and Santos. "And you think you can give her more?" "I already have." Kirk's smile widened. She's seen what life could be like with someone who puts her first. The travel, the excitement, the passion, the money laundering. Ian kept his voice calm, watching Kirk's reflection carefully. "The murders?" The smile didn't waver, but Kirk's eyes hardened. "I'm not sure what you're implying, but I'm here as a courtesy. To explain about Molly and me before she files for divorce. Like you explain things to Sandra Chin? Or Maria Delgado? Or Lisa Montgomery?" Now the smile disappeared. Kirk's hand moved slightly toward his jacket. "I don't know who those women are. They were all found dead at your construction sites." Ian stood slowly, turning to face Kirk. "All ruled accidents, after they'd helped you move money through various accounts." Santos tensed by the door, his hand definitely reaching for a weapon. Kirk held up a hand, stopping his brother. "Ian, you're upset. Understandably so. But throwing around wild accusations won't change the fact that your wife has chosen to leave you." "Has she?" Ian moved slightly, getting better angles for the cameras. "Or is she just the next woman you're planning to use and dispose of?" "You should be careful with accusations like that." Kirk's voice carried a hint of steel now. "A man in your position, accidents can happen to anyone. Is that a threat, Pete? A friendly warning? From someone who cares about your wife?" Ian smiled, and something in that smile made Kirk take a step back. "It's funny you should mention accidents, because I've been looking into yours. All those convenient deaths at your construction sites. All those women who helped you move money around before they tragically fell down elevator shafts or off scaffolding." "Santos," Kirk's voice was sharp. "Wait outside." "Pete." "Outside." The door closed behind Santos, but Ian knew he wouldn't go far. Through his earpiece, Zach confirmed. "Hughes is in position by the front window. He's got a clear shot if Kirk gives the signal." Kirk's facade of civility was cracking. "Whatever you think you know." "I know everything," Ian interrupted. "About Martha Wu laundering money through real estate deals. About Albert Moody providing alibis. About Hilda Merrill letting you use the school as a meeting place." Each name landed like a physical blow. Kirk's hand was definitely moving toward his jacket now. "I know about the domestic violence reports from your ex-wife, Rebecca. About the sealed juvenile records. About the private investigator who died in that convenient car accident. You've been investigating me." Kirk's voice was cold now, all pretense gone. For months, long before you ever met my wife. Ian moved again, positioning himself better. Did you know who I was when you targeted Molly? Or was it just a happy coincidence? A federal agent's wife, perfect for your next insurance policy? The weapon appeared in Kirk's hand smoothly, professionally. You should have kept this personal, Agent Lloyd. A simple divorce, a clean break. Now you've forced my hand. Have I? Ian remained still, watching Kirk's trigger finger. Or did you always plan to eliminate the federal agent investigating your operation? Through his earpiece, Zach's voice was steady. Teams in position. Waiting for your signal. Kirk's smile returned, colder now. You know what's funny? Molly actually loves me. Even after I told her about the affairs, about using her accounts. She still believes we'll end up together. Like Rebecca believed? Before she disappeared? My ex-wife had unfortunate accidents. Like you're about to have? Kirk raised the weapon. Federal agent or not, a man finding his wife's lover in his home. Situations can get volatile. The window behind Kirk shattered as Santos crashed through it, gun drawn. Pete. Feds outside. Dozens of them. Kirk's composure cracked. His head turned slightly toward his brother, and Ian moved. His training took over. Fluid motion, muscle memory, years of preparation for exactly this moment. His own weapon seemed to materialize in his hand. Federal agent. Drop your weapon. Kirk fired, the shot going wide as Ian dove behind the couch. Santos sprayed bullets wildly, taking out family photos and shattering the television screen. Through his earpiece, Ian could hear the organized chaos of his team moving in. Drop your weapons. Multiple voices now, federal agents converging from every entrance. Kirk tried to retreat toward the kitchen, but Ian had planned for that. Agent Chen appeared in the doorway, weapon trained. Federal agent, on your knees. Santos attempted to provide covering fire, but he'd already expended most of his ammunition in his initial panic. The distinctive click of an empty chamber echoed in the sudden silence. It's over, Pete, Ian called out, keeping his weapon trained on Kirk. Federal agents at every exit. Snipers on the neighboring roofs. You're done. Kirk's response was to turn and fire directly at Ian. The bullet splintered the wooden frame of the couch inches from Ian's head. Ian returned fire. 2 precise shots. Kirk sprawled backward, his weapon clattering across the hardwood floor. Pete! Santos tried to reach his brother, but was tackled by 2 agents bursting through the front door. The next few minutes were controlled chaos. Agents secured the scene, weapons were collected, and medical teams rushed in. Kirk was alive but unconscious, the bullets having struck non-lethal areas exactly as Ian had planned. House is secure, Zach reported, holstering his weapon. You okay? Before Ian could answer, a car screeched to a halt outside. Molly's voice carried through the broken window. Pete, Ian, what have you done? She burst through the door, taking in the scene. Her lover being loaded onto a stretcher, her husband standing calmly among federal agents, her pristine living room riddled with bullet holes. You set him up, she accused, her face contorted with rage and disbelief. This was all a trap. Mrs. Lloyd, Zach stepped forward, badge out. You need to come with us. We have some questions about your involvement in Mr. Kirk's financial activities. I'm not saying anything without my lawyer. Molly pulled out her phone. I'm calling Johanna McFarland right now. That would be inadvisable, a new voice said. Wilson Love stepped through the doorway, documents in hand. Especially given the evidence of money laundering we've already uncovered. Molly's hand shook as she stared at Ian. You had no right. Pete loves me. Like he loved the other women? Ian kept his voice professional, detached. The ones who had accidents at his construction sites after they'd served their purpose? That's not. He wouldn't. Her composure cracked as she watched Santos being led away in handcuffs. You've ruined everything. Agent Lloyd, one of the evidence technicians, called out. We've got the surveillance footage secured. Multiple angles of Kirk drawing and firing first. Molly's eyes darted around the room, finally noticing the hidden cameras. Understanding dawned on her face. You knew. You knew all along. Mrs. Lloyd. Wilson stepped forward. I have here emergency orders freezing all your joint accounts pending investigation. I also have temporary custody orders for your children, given the circumstances. The children? Molly's face went pale. Where are they? What have you done with my children? They're safe, Ian said simply. Away from all this. Molly's scream of rage was cut short as federal agents moved to escort her from the scene. This isn't over, Ian. You'll regret this. As the house was processed as a crime scene, Ian stood in his bullet-riddled living room, surrounded by evidence technicians and federal agents. Family photos lay shattered on the floor, images of happier times now broken, like the marriage they represented. You did good, Zach said quietly, standing beside him. Clean shoot, everything by the book. Kirk's prints on the weapon, footage of him drawing first. It's solid. Ian nodded, watching his agents bag Kirk's gun as evidence. The night was far from over. There would be statements to take, reports to file, evidence to process. But the immediate danger had passed. Sir, Agent Shin approached with a tablet. You should see this. We found Kirk's phone. There are messages, plans for what was supposed to happen here tonight. Ian took the tablet, reading quickly. The messages confirmed everything. Kirk had indeed planned to eliminate a federal agent who'd gotten too close to his operation, using the revelation of an affair as cover. Get this to digital forensics, he ordered. I want every message, every contact, every detail of his operation. As the night deepened and the evidence teams worked, Ian stood at his broken window, looking out at the neighborhood where he'd built a life. Somewhere out there, Kirk's network was already mobilizing. Lawyers were being called, stories were being constructed. But for now, in this moment, he had done what needed to be done. He had protected himself, gathered his evidence, and most importantly, kept his children safe from the violence that had erupted in their home. The night wasn't over, but Act Two's confrontation had reached its climax. The aftermath would come later. For now, there were procedures to follow, reports to file, and a criminal empire to dismantle, one piece of evidence at a time. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The forensic accountant's fingers flew across her keyboard as she pieced together the complex web of transactions that connected Pete Kirk's construction empire to dozens of shell companies. Look at this, Julie called out to Ian, who stood behind her studying the multiple screens. Every real estate transaction through Martha Wu's agency was overvalued by exactly 27.3%. The excess was then channeled through a series of offshore accounts before being reinvested in Kirk's construction projects. Ian leaned closer, watching as she pulled up spreadsheet after spreadsheet. Can you trace the money back to its source? That's where it gets interesting. Julie pulled up a new window, this one showing a complex diagram of financial flows. The initial funds came from what looks like legitimate construction contracts, but when you dig deeper, she highlighted a series of transactions. These contracts were all with companies that don't actually exist. Across the room, cyber expert Roberto Gould let out a low whistle. You're going to want to see this. He swiveled his monitor toward them, displaying a series of encrypted messages he'd recovered from Kirk's servers. They weren't just using the construction companies for money laundering. Look at these communications. Ian scanned the decrypted messages, his jaw tightening. The evidence was damning, not just of Kirk's operation, but of Molly's knowing involvement. The timestamps matched perfectly with her suspicious banking activities. Agent Lloyd? Wilson Love appeared in the doorway, his usual immaculate appearance somewhat rumpled after days of non-stop work. McFarland's filed her first motion. She's trying to paint the shooting as a premeditated trap. Let her try. Ian handed him Julie's latest financial report. We've got the evidence showing Kirk's intent. The surveillance footage proves he drew first. Wilson flipped through the report, his eyebrows rising. This is comprehensive, but McFarland's good at spinning narratives. She's already talking to reporters, claiming police brutality, abuse of power. Show them this, Roberto interrupted, turning another monitor. I found Kirk's actual plans for that night, complete with contingencies for if things went wrong. He wasn't just planning to kill Ian. He had escape routes mapped out, offshore accounts ready. Julie pushed back from her desk, stretching after hours of hunching over keyboards. The money trail doesn't lie. I've documented every transaction, every shell company, every fake contract. Kirk's brother Santos? His wrongful death lawsuit is being funded by the same hidden accounts they used for money laundering. Speaking of Santos, Ian's partner Zach entered, carrying a fresh stack of files. Anthony Larson just sent over proof of his connections to organized crime. Turns out little brother wasn't just muscle. He was the link to their bigger operation. Wilson spread the documents across a conference table, creating a visual timeline of the conspiracy. This is exactly what we need. McFarland's built her career on attacking law enforcement, but she's never faced evidence this solid. She's not the only problem, Ian said, studying the timeline. Kirk's network is extensive. Judges, politicians, business leaders, they're all connected through these financial transactions. Roberto spun in his chair, pulling up another screen of data. Check this out. Encrypted communications between Kirk and at least 3 city officials. They were fast-tracking permits, ignoring safety violations, looking the other way while he built his empire. And now we have proof. Julie stood, moving to the conference table. She began arranging printouts in precise patterns, building a paper trail that would be impossible to deny. Every donation to Hilda Merrill's school, matched by withdrawals from known money laundering accounts. Every real estate deal through Martha Wu, documented with inflated prices and hidden kickbacks. Ian watched his team work, each person adding another piece to the puzzle. The evidence they gathered went far beyond his personal stake in the case. This was about dismantling an entire criminal enterprise that had corrupted their city. Wilson, he turned to his attorney. How do we protect this evidence? McFarland will try to suppress anything she can. Already handled. Wilson pulled out his phone, showing an email. I filed everything with multiple courts under seal. Even if she manages to suppress some evidence in one venue, we've got backups in others. Sir, a young agent appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Lloyd's attorney is here. She's requesting a meeting. Ian exchanged glances with Wilson. McFarland's making her move early. Let her come. Wilson straightened his tie, professionalism returning to his demeanor. She needs to see exactly what she's up against. Johanna McFarland swept into the office like a storm front, designer's suit immaculate, heels clicking against the tile floor. This is harassment, she announced without preamble. My client's husband sets up an elaborate trap, endangers her boyfriend's life, and now you're persecuting her with baseless financial accusations? Baseless? Julie stood, gesturing to her screens. Would you like me to walk you through the money laundering evidence? The specific transactions your client facilitated? The offshore accounts she helped manage? McFarland faltered slightly at the sight of the extensive financial documentation. My client was unaware of any illegal activities. She trusted Mr. Kirk. She trusted him so much she helped him move millions through shell companies. Roberto swiveled his monitor. Maybe you'd like to explain these emails? The ones where she explicitly discusses hiding transactions from federal oversight. Wilson stepped forward, his voice professionally pleasant. Ms. McFarland, before you continue, you should know that representing proceeds of crime carries serious legal consequences for attorneys. Are you certain you want to continue this line of defense? The color drained from McFarland's face as she scanned the evidence displays. Her reputation for attacking law enforcement was legendary, but she'd never faced such comprehensive documentation of criminal activity. My client, she began, then stopped, reassessing. Perhaps we should discuss possible cooperation agreements. Too late, Ian said quietly. Martha Wu's already talking. She can document every transaction, every meeting, every decision your client made knowingly and willfully. McFarland's composure cracked slightly. I'll need time to review this evidence with my client. Take all the time you need. Wilson's smile was predatory. But you might want to consider your own liability. Knowingly filing false claims using criminally obtained funds? That's a career ender. As McFarland retreated, visibly shaken, Ian turned back to his team. Julie was already diving back into the financial records. Roberto was decrypting more communications, and Anthony Larson had sent another batch of evidence connecting Santos Hughes to organized crime. One down, Zach commented, watching McFarland's hasty departure. Many more to go, Ian replied, studying the growing evidence wall. But now they know what they're up against. Agent Lloyd? Julie called out. I think I found something interesting in Molly's private accounts. Looks like she was planning this for longer than we thought. The counterattack was fully underway, and they had only begun to reveal the true scope of Kirk's criminal enterprise. The federal courthouse loomed against the morning sky. Inside courtroom 3B, Martha Wu sat rigid in the witness box, her designer outfit replaced by simple business attire, her usual confidence shattered by the weight of her testimony. Ms. Wu, the federal prosecutor began, please explain to the court exactly how the money laundering operation worked through your real estate agency. Martha glanced nervously at her attorney, who nodded slightly. Their cooperation agreement was solid, but the words still caught in her throat. We would artificially inflate property values for Kirk's construction projects. The excess funds would be channeled through various shell companies, then reinvested in new properties. And Mrs. Lloyd's role in this operation? Molly handled the banking arrangements. She had the connections, the legitimate business background to make the transactions look normal. Martha's voice cracked slightly. She knew exactly what we were doing. She helped design the system. In the gallery, Ian watched as his wife's former friend systematically dismantled any pretense of innocence. Behind him, Julie Willard whispered updates about the ongoing financial investigation. They'd uncovered even more accounts, more connections, more evidence of the widespread corruption. The courtroom door opened quietly as Albert Moody was led in by federal marshals. Their neighbor looked decades older than he had just weeks ago, his shoulders hunched under the weight of his own guilty plea. He would testify next, explaining how he'd provided alibis for Molly's meetings with Kirk. Ms. Wu, the prosecutor continued, tell us about Hilda Merrill's involvement. Martha straightened slightly. The school was perfect for their meetings. Who would question a parent visiting the principal? And the donations, they were a way to move money while buying silence and cooperation. The evidence mounted throughout the day. Witness after witness took the stand, each adding another piece to the puzzle. Former employees from Kirk's construction companies testified about falsified contracts. Bank employees admitted to overlooking suspicious transactions. City officials confessed to accepting bribes for permits and inspections. During a brief recess, Wilson Love approached Ian with fresh documents. Hilda Merrill's attorney reached out. She's ready to plead guilty and cooperate. Apparently, the school board's internal investigation uncovered even more evidence of financial misconduct. What about her brother on the zoning board? Resigned this morning. He's cooperating too. Wilson shuffled through his papers. The dominoes are falling faster than we can track them. Back in session, the court heard testimony from FBI forensic experts. Julie Willard methodically explained the complex financial trails, her presentations making clear even the most convoluted transactions. Roberto Gould demonstrated how they decrypted communications, proving the conspiracy. Your Honor, the prosecutor addressed Judge Helena Chun, the government has established a clear pattern of systematic criminal activity. Mrs. Lloyd wasn't merely a passive participant. She was a key facilitator in a massive money laundering operation. From her seat at the defense table, Molly stared straight ahead, her face a mask of composure. Her new attorney, McFarland, having withdrawn from the case, looked increasingly overwhelmed by the mountain of evidence. The defense would like to approach the bench, Molly's attorney requested, his voice betraying his desperation. As the lawyers huddled with the judge, Ian observed the gallery. Members of Kirk's criminal organization sat mixed with reporters, all watching their empire crumble under the weight of testimony and evidence. The bench conference ended, and Molly's attorney turned to address the court. Your Honor, in light of the overwhelming evidence, my client wishes to change her plea. We're prepared to offer complete cooperation in exchange for consideration at sentencing. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Molly finally turned, meeting Ian's gaze for the first time since her arrest. In her eyes, he saw not remorse, but calculation. She was cutting her losses, saving herself as her lover's criminal empire collapsed around them. Mrs. Lloyd, Judge Chin's voice cut through the whispers. You understand that by changing your plea and cooperating, you're admitting to all charges, including money laundering, conspiracy, and accessory to various financial crimes? Yes, Your Honor. Molly's voice was steady, professional. the same tone she'd used when closing real estate deals. "I'm prepared to provide complete information about the organization's activities." Too late, Ian heard Julie whisper behind him. "We already have everything." The judge set a date for sentencing and adjourned the court. As Molly was led away by marshals, Martha Wu was escorted out through another door, her testimony complete. Albert Moody would return tomorrow to add his piece to the prosecution's case. In the courthouse corridor, Assistant District Attorney Raquel West approached Ian with more updates. Martha's testimony opened up new leads. "We're finding connections to similar operations in other states. What about the school board investigation?" "Complete cooperation." Raquel consulted her notes. "Hilda Merrill's replacement is already implementing new financial oversight measures. The donations have been frozen pending forfeiture proceedings." They walked together to the courthouse steps, where reporters had gathered for statements. Ian let the prosecutors handle the press while he observed the scene. Justice was being served, methodically and thoroughly, as Kirk's criminal empire was dismantled piece by piece. The box of case files landed on Ian's new desk with a satisfying thud. After months of investigations, prosecutions, and paperwork, he was finally settling into his role as head of the White-Collar Crimes Division. The promotion had come with a larger office, one with windows overlooking the city he'd helped clean up. "I think that's the last of them," Raquel West said, brushing dust from her hands. She'd been instrumental in prosecuting the cases that had emerged from Kirk's operation, working closely with Ian's team to ensure every lead was followed, every crime addressed. "Hard to believe it's really over," Ian mused, looking at the framed newspaper article he'd just hung. The headline caught the morning light. "Federal agent uncovers multi-million-dollar crime ring while stopping home invasion." Raquel perched on the edge of his desk, a familiar gesture after months of working together. "Not completely over. We're still finding new connections, following new leads. But the main players? They're done." They shared a moment of comfortable silence, both thinking about how far they'd come. What had started as a personal betrayal had led to the exposure of widespread corruption, the dismantling of a criminal empire, and, unexpectedly, the foundation of something new between them. A knock at the door interrupted their reflection. Julie Willard entered, carrying fresh financial reports. "You're going to want to see this. Remember those connections we found to other states? Turns out Kirk's operation was even bigger than we thought." "How much bigger?" Ian asked, making room on his desk for more files. 3 states, dozens of construction projects, hundreds of millions in laundered money. Julie spread out her findings. "But here's the good news. Every case we crack helps other jurisdictions with their investigations. It's like dominoes falling across the country." Raquel examined the reports with professional interest. "The precedents we set here are being cited in cases everywhere. Other prosecutors are using our playbook." The office door opened again, this time revealing Ian's sister Lupe. She'd been a rock throughout the ordeal, caring for his children while the case unfolded. "Ready for lunch?" "The kids are excited about trying that new pizza place." Ian checked his watch, then looked questioningly at Raquel. She smiled and nodded. Their working lunch could wait. Some things were more important than case files. As they rode the elevator down, Lupe studied her brother's face. "You seem different lately. More at peace." "Sometimes losing what you thought you had opens the door to something real," Ian replied, quoting his sister's own words back to her. The elevator opened to reveal Ian's children waiting with Roberto, who'd apparently been entertaining them with stories about computer forensics. Their faces lit up at the sight of their father, their resilience in the face of change still amazing him. "Dad," his daughter called out. "Can Raquel come to pizza too?" Ian looked at Raquel, who was already nodding. Their relationship had evolved naturally, built on shared values and mutual respect. She'd helped the children understand their mother's choices without excusing them, offering a perspective that balanced justice with compassion. As they walked to lunch, Ian reflected on how much had changed. His old life had shattered the night of the confrontation with Kirk, but from those broken pieces, something stronger had emerged. His team had taken down a criminal empire. His children were thriving despite the upheaval, and he'd found a partnership based on truth rather than deception. The pizza place was crowded with families, the noise and energy a marked contrast to the quiet intensity of the federal building. Watching his children laugh with Raquel over stringy cheese and silly jokes, Ian felt the last pieces of his new life falling into place. "You know," Raquel said quietly, while the kids were distracted by dessert options, "what you did, maintaining professional objectivity while facing personal betrayal, it's becoming a case study at the FBI Academy." Ian smiled, thinking of the new agents who would study his methodical approach, learning how to handle cases where personal and professional lives collided. They'll learn that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best outcomes. After lunch, returning to his office, Ian found more files waiting, new cases, new challenges, new opportunities to serve justice. But now he approached them with hard-won wisdom and the support of a team that had proven itself under the most difficult circumstances. Epilogue. 1 year later, Ian stood at the window of his office in the white-collar crimes division, the morning sun warming his face. The framed newspaper article on his wall had become something of a legend in the department. Federal agent uncovers multi-million-dollar crime ring while stopping home invasion. The headline barely scratched the surface of what had become one of the department's most significant cases. Behind him, Zach was briefing new agents on a case, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd helped bring down one of the biggest criminal enterprises in the city's history. The Pete Kirk case had changed everything: procedures, protocols, even the way they approached complex financial investigations. A knock at his door drew his attention. Raquel entered, now a familiar and welcome presence in both his professional and personal life. Their engagement announcement had surprised no one who'd watched them work together to dismantle Kirk's criminal empire. "Just got word from the prison," she said, settling into what had become her usual chair. "Molly's plea deal is processing. She's offering more information about Kirk's operations in exchange for considerations." Ian nodded, unsurprised. His ex-wife had always been practical, even in defeat. The children were adjusting well to their new reality, helped by Raquel's steady presence and Lupe's unwavering support. "The construction companies?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "All seized and sold," Raquel confirmed. "The proceeds are being distributed to the victims of their human trafficking operations. Julie's team is handling the financial distributions." The scope of Kirk's crimes had proven even larger than they'd initially suspected. The construction empire had been just the tip of the iceberg, concealing a network of criminal enterprises that had spread across 3 states. But methodically, piece by piece, they dismantled it all. The FBI Academy called again, Raquel mentioned, a smile playing at her lips. "They want you to give another guest lecture on maintaining professional objectivity in personally compromising cases." Ian smiled, remembering his sister's words that had become something of a personal mantra. Sometimes losing what you thought you had opens the door to something real. The case had become required reading at the Academy, not just for its complexity, but for the way it demonstrated the importance of procedure, evidence, and maintaining professional focus, even when cases became deeply personal. A commotion outside his office drew their attention. Roberto was showing the newest team members some of the encryption-breaking techniques he developed during the Kirk investigation. Their success had led to new standard procedures for handling complex financial crimes, with their methods being adopted by departments across the country. "Ready for dinner with the kids?" Raquel asked, checking her watch. "Lupe's making her famous lasagna." Ian gathered his coat, glancing one last time at the newspaper article. The story it told was incomplete. It couldn't capture the personal growth, the strengthened relationships, or the deeper understanding he'd gained through the ordeal. His new relationship with Raquel was built on a foundation of truth and shared values, proving that sometimes life's worst moments could indeed lead to its best outcomes. As they left the office together, Ian reflected on how the betrayal that had threatened to destroy his life had instead led him to a stronger, more authentic one. The criminal empire had crumbled, justice had been served, and from the ashes of his old life, something better had emerged. The evening sun painted the city in warm hues as they drove to Lupe's house. The same city that had harbored Kirk's criminal enterprise was now cleaner, safer, thanks to their work. But more importantly, it was home to a family rebuilt on honesty, understanding, and real love, proving that sometimes the best revenge wasn't victory over enemies, but finding a better path forward. Extended epilogue 10 years later. The federal courthouse hadn't changed much in the decade since the Kirk case had first shaken its foundations. Ian Lloyd, now deputy director of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, stood at the podium in the main conference room, addressing a new class of agents. The case that had nearly destroyed his life had become a cornerstone of FBI training, particularly in handling complex financial crimes with personal implications. The Kirk case wasn't just about money laundering, Ian explained, his silver streak hair catching the morning light. It was about the intersection of personal betrayal and professional duty, about maintaining objectivity when everything becomes personal. In the audience, he spotted familiar faces. Julie Willard, now heading her own forensic accounting division, sat with her team. Her expertise in following complex money trails had made her department the go-to resource for agencies across the country. The methodologies she developed during the Kirk case had become standard procedure in financial crime investigations. After the lecture, Julie approached with fresh files. "You'll want to see this," she said, her expression grim. "Remember those offshore accounts we could never quite crack during the Kirk case? They just resurfaced." In his office, they reviewed the new evidence. Even after a decade, the ripples from Kirk's criminal empire continued to reach distant shores. But now they had better tools, stronger procedures, and a network of experienced investigators who'd learned from that landmark case. "How's Pete doing in federal prison?" Julie asked, though she already knew the answer. "Still maintaining his innocence," Ian replied, scanning the documents. "His last appeal was denied 6 months ago. The evidence was too solid. Thanks to your work, Pete Kirk's fall had been spectacular and complete. The man who'd once commanded a criminal empire now spent his days in a maximum security facility, his attempts to maintain control of his organization thwarted by continuous monitoring. His brother Santos had turned state's evidence 5 years into his sentence, revealing even more connections that led to dozens of additional arrests. The door opened, admitting Raquel, now Judge Wes Lloyd, still elegant in her judicial robes. 10 years of marriage had only strengthened their bond, built on the foundation of truth and justice they'd forged during the investigation. "Just finished an interesting case," she said, settling into her usual chair. "Molly's requesting early release again." Ian raised an eyebrow. His ex-wife's journey through the justice system had been a study in consequences. Despite her cooperation, the evidence against her had been too substantial to ignore. Her plea deal had resulted in a 15-year sentence, of which she'd served 12. "On what grounds this time?" Julie asked, curious. "Model prisoner behavior, continued cooperation with ongoing investigations." Raquel shook her head. "But there's more. She's been writing a book, a cautionary tale about how ambition and greed led her astray." Ian wasn't surprised. Molly had always been adaptable, finding ways to turn situations to her advantage. Even in prison, she'd managed to complete her MBA through a correspondence program, teaching financial literacy to other inmates. Her current attorney argued this showed genuine rehabilitation. "The kids going to the hearing?" Julie asked softly. That was the most complex part of the aftermath. Ian and Molly's children, now in college, had grown into remarkable young adults despite, or perhaps because of, the challenges they'd faced. Their daughter Emma was studying law at Georgetown, inspired by watching Raquel's dedication to justice. Their son Michael was pursuing forensic accounting, having spent summers interning with Julie's department. "They're old enough to make that decision for themselves now," Ian replied. "Emma wants to go. She's analyzing it from a legal perspective. Michael's more hesitant." The children's relationship with their mother had evolved over the years. Initial anger had given way to a complex understanding, helped by Raquel's patient guidance and regular family therapy. They visited Molly in prison occasionally, their conversations moving from awkward silence to cautious dialogue. A knock at the door announced Zach Dwyer, now assistant director of operations. Time had added gray to his temples, but none to his spirit. "You're not going to believe who just walked into the lobby," he said, grinning. "Dina Carroll." Ian smiled, remembering Molly's former best friend, whose warning had helped break the case. After testifying, Dina had moved across the country, building a successful real estate business untainted by her former associations. Her annual Christmas cards kept them updated on her life. "She's here about Martha Wu," Zach explained. "Apparently, Martha's being released next month. Dina wanted to warn us. She's heard Martha's planning to write her own book about the case." The ripples continued. Martha Wu had served 10 years for her role in the money laundering operation. Unlike Molly, she'd struggled to adapt to prison life, her privileged background leaving her ill-prepared for the reality of incarceration. "What about the others?" Julie asked, pulling up old case files on her tablet. The network that had supported Kirk's operations had met various fates. Albert Moody had served 5 years, then moved to Florida, living quietly on a small pension. Hilda Merrill had avoided prison through her early cooperation, but was banned from working in education. She now ran a small bookkeeping service in Arizona, her life a shadow of her former status. "Remember Detective Bessie Roach?" Raquel asked. She finally retired last year. The Kirk case was her last big one. She consulted on similar cases across the country until her retirement. Ian stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. The skyline had changed in 10 years, but some buildings remained, including several former Kirk properties that had been seized and repurposed. The construction empire that had once laundered millions now housed legitimate businesses, charities, and in one ironic twist, a federal law enforcement training center. His phone buzzed, a text from Lupe. His sister had remained a cornerstone of their family, her house still the gathering place for holidays and celebrations. Her perspective on losing and finding had proven prophetic. From the ashes of betrayal, they had all built something stronger. "Dad!" Emma's voice came from the doorway. His daughter, so much like him in her dedication to justice, but with a warmth that reminded him of Raquel. "We need to talk about Mom's hearing." Ian gestured her in, watching as she greeted everyone with the easy confidence of someone who'd grown up surrounded by law enforcement's finest. She'd inherited his analytical mind and Raquel's sense of fairness, combining them into something uniquely her own. "I've been reviewing her case files," Emma said, spreading documents across his desk. "Her rehabilitation programs, her cooperation with ongoing investigations, her work with other inmates. Legally, she has a strong case for early release." The room fell silent, each person lost in memories of the case that had changed all their lives. Julie remembered the complex financial trails that had led to justice. Zach thought of the stakeouts and surveillance that had built their case. Raquel considered how justice and mercy sometimes intersected in unexpected ways. "Whatever the outcome," Ian said finally, "we're stronger for having gone through it all." As if to emphasize his point, Michael appeared in the doorway, fresh from his internship with Julie's department. "Found something interesting in those old offshore accounts," he announced, his expression a mirror of Julie's determined focus. The next generation was carrying forward their legacy, turning past wounds into wisdom, using their experiences to build a better future. The Kirk case hadn't just changed their lives. It had created ripples that would influence justice for years to come. Later that evening, at their regular family dinner at Lupe's house, Ian watched his extended family interact. Raquel discussing legal theory with Emma, Michael showing Julie his latest financial analysis techniques, Zach trading old case stories with Lupe. This was the real victory, not just the dismantling of a criminal empire, but the building of something stronger in its place. His phone lit up with a notification, another appeal denial for Pete Kirk. The man who had tried to destroy his life would likely spend the rest of his days in prison, his empire dismantled, his legacy one of cautionary tales and FBI training modules. "You okay?" Raquel asked softly, noticing his distant expression. "Better than okay," he replied, watching their family's easy interaction. "Just thinking about how sometimes the worst moments really do lead to the best outcomes." The sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, a fitting backdrop to their gathering. In the decades since the Kirk case, they'd all faced challenges and changes, but the foundation built on truth and justice had never wavered. The betrayal that had threatened to destroy everything had instead created something stronger, more genuine, and ultimately more lasting than anything built on deception could have been. As evening settled over the city, Ian reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The case that had become a legend in the FBI had also become a testament to resilience, to the power of truth over deception, and to the possibility of building something better from the ashes of betrayal. The consequences of choices made a decade ago continued to shape lives, but not in the way anyone could have predicted. The extended family gathering around Lupe's dinner table was proof that sometimes losing what you thought you had really does open the door to something real, something that could withstand any storm, face any challenge, and emerge stronger for having weathered it together. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.